Do you remember your favorite experience doing charity work? I always remember my favorite moment as a basket brigade volunteer. It was Thanksgiving in jacket weather. The sun was out, so it was warm enough that we didn't need gloves. My brother Tony was driving his company car, since it was an SUV, so we needed the space, and well, we're doing God's work, so someone else can pay for the mileage. We pulled off the main road and into a townhouse complex right off the main road. As it goes with affordable high density housing, it's often right off a busy street. That busy street having 4 to 6 lanes of traffic, and on the other side of the backyard for this property. The houses were close together in this complex. The lots were maybe 20 feet wide, single lane driveways. We were driving in slowly, going over speed bumps, and I was looking at the house numbers. So was my brother, of course. He was driving. I was the passenger, so it's my job to navigate. We find the house and pull into the driveway. It looks like all the rest of the houses in the complex, but there's toys on the front lawn. The grass was that shade of yellow and green, being the fall. The complex looks to be a condominium, since all the properties look the same, built in like the 1980s. Not the best materials, not the best construction. Affordable housing. They've been maintained okay, but they haven't been painted in a while. And I can see tattered window screens in several properties, some curling shingles. Our list of deliveries details that this family that we're delivering to is 2 sisters. They're sharing one house and each having kids, for a total of 5 kids. The oldest around 9, the youngest around 24 months. They're both single moms, and single moms have a special place in my heart. Statistically, single moms have the highest chance of living in poverty of any household. If you actually look at the stats, I believe if you look at the breakdown of households that live in poverty, over half are single mom households. I'm a parent too, and I know how hard it is. I couldn't imagine being on my own on a single income. My brother and I grabbed boxes and bags of groceries, including a turkey, fresh fruit, vegetables, bread, butter, eggs, everything you need to entertain a family for Easter dinner. We carry the groceries from the trunk and walk up to the front door, knock, and are greeted by yelling children. They're excited to see who's coming and jump up and down with smiles to greet us. One of the moms comes around the corner. Only one of the moms was home. So she comes around the corner to greet us to say thank you. She's dressed as typical, kind of like how I'm dressed now. Sweats, hoodie. She's dressed comfortably in sweats, as everyone does on weekends, and she looks tired. Sorry if anyone doesn't like being called to be described as looking tired, but she had a kind smile, tired smile, and she said thank you. She hugs both my brother and I. The kids during this are rummaging through the packages that we brought. The box and bags are heavy, so they're going through the individual items. So they're lifting up, they're picking out items like celery, for example. They lift it over their heads and yell, "Celery!" And then they run off into the kitchen to drop them off and come back and grab the next item. We tell the mom and the kids that we actually have more stuff to get from the car. So we go back and make another trip. We return with more groceries, including some books, used books for kids that were donated by another volunteer. One of the kids even notices that we brought apple pie, and the kid screams "pie." Another kid screams, "Oh look, books," as if they'd never seen pie or books before. 2 of the kids help themselves to books and go outside and read in the sun. The other kids follow and play with it, run around on the lawn, and they play with the toys that were out there when we arrived. We exchanged hugs with mom again, wishing her a happy Thanksgiving. Tony and I returned to the car and sit in silence for about 30 seconds before turning on the engine. It wasn't planned. We were just sitting there in silence, taking in the experience of making a difference. A small effort in our minds, in our eyes, for these kids and these single moms, and they're grateful for so little. My brother says something along the lines of how great it feels to help out this family. I say nothing, as I'm not typically good at expressing my feelings. I'm the passenger navigator, so I check the list and key in the GPS for our next delivery. A simple act on a fall day with my brother, and I'll never forget it. Life is all about experiences after all. This was the moment I knew that we were on to the best volunteer experience ever, and I got to share it with my big brother. I knew we had to bring it back to Hamilton. This was 6 years ago, and from today, 6 years ago, and with the help of many others, we went on from starting out as a volunteer for another organization to building and presiding over the biggest operating budget for a basket brigade charity. We are the only basket brigade that operates Easter, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. Most don't even do 2 holidays. We do all 3. Anywhere and nowhere in North America does this exist. People need our help. Hence, we do 3 holidays, and we will be the change they need. This Easter, 32 of the Hamilton's poorest families will have their wishes answered. Our volunteers are sending home wish lists for the families to fill out, and our volunteers will receive the completed wish lists with the family's story and contact information to go shopping. We budget about $100 per family. We average about 5 people per family. Hence, you can figure out our budget. Our operating budget for this event is about $16,000. We will add families as donations continue to come in. On April 20th, we throw a pizza party with a hot dog cart. This is all free, by the way. DJ, Batman's confirmed to attend. We have free giveaways thanks to our other donors, all for the families and our volunteers. Our volunteers show up early to wrap presents. We provide wrapping paper and tape and scissors and all this other stuff. Lots of tables for working space. And this is where we hand over our gifts to our families. For those families that can't make it in person, we just simply deliver. That's a separate arrangement with other volunteers. But can you really imagine these families missing out on these parties? We'll even deliver their stuff after the party as well. We really do want the families to come enjoy the free food and music and dancing. For details, the best place to follow along is our private Facebook. It's facebook.com/groups/Hamilton Basket Brigade. Again, it's www.facebook.com/groups/Hamilton Basket Brigade. The links are all in the show notes. Facebook is much better to communicate with us. We are considerably slower with email. We might send 1 email a week for this. We send enough emails as is. So April 20th, we will be the change we want to see in the world. We also have the Easter Bunny, who's coming, and at the end to summarize, it's a party for 32 of Hamilton's most impoverished families. We start at 10, families start arriving about 11, we are done by 1, all in Hamilton. So for privacy reasons, all full details are on our private Facebook group, and for those who want to donate or volunteer, you have to go register at www.hamiltonbasketbrigade.com. Again, that's for donations and volunteers. You have to register. We need your details and how to contact you so we know who you are. www.hamiltonbasketbrigade.com. On to this week's show. This week's guest is an old friend who is the newest member of my team. Her name is Paisley Mackenzie. I first met Paisley back in 2011 when I first started looking into Brantford. Back then this was about 2011, yeah. Then it was a top town for investment, and it still is. A best practice when learning about a new city is to meet with the economic development officer. So not just for Brantford, not for just for any city I invest in. You should do this for any city you invest in. Whether if you've never met them, I'd still go meet them. And at this time for Brantford, it was Paisley Mackenzie. For free. So just think about that. For free, I was able to bounce residential investment opportunities off a local expert with over 20 years experience of business and real estate in the city for free. Someone who's completely knowledgeable with really no financial incentive whether I buy or not. That is some great free advisor advice. Paisley and I hit it off immediately. Paisley being very kind and helpful, very experienced and knowledgeable in sharing. And then in turn, in me, Paisley could tell I was not like the other real estate agents she knows and meets and hears nightmare stories about. Very few residential agents ever come meet with the economic development officer looking for the best opportunities for their clients. Paisley is now the former economic development officer. She had 28 years experience in that role. Her job was to work with investors and businesses from inside and outside Brantford to invest in Brantford. She's now doing the same as a member of my team called the Titan Investment Real Estate as a coach to guide and teach others to invest in Brantford, Hamilton, and surrounding areas. Also, as a bonus, her knowledge of commercial and industrial is second to none. But enough from me. I'm proud to present to you Paisley Mackenzie. Hello, Paisley.
Hello, Erwin. How are you today?
I'm excellent. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
What's keeping you busy these days?
Just recently, I've been working very hard on my real estate. I moved a couple of times in the last year or so,
Uh-huh.
and I've been helping a friend do some house renovations.
Hmm. Um, so you didn't mention a job. Why is there no day job mentioned?
Because I've been retired for a couple of years.
Uh-huh. Have you really been retired? You don't act like a retiree.
Well, I don't want to be a retiree.
Uh-huh.
So that's why I've been doing the real estate.
Hmm.
Partly with your, well, a lot with your encouragement, but obviously, I was looking for some things to do, and I've been doing a little consulting over the last couple of years as
Mm.
well on some development stuff, particularly in Brantford. Um, and yeah, just trying to keep busy and do a bunch of different things because yes, I'm not actually ready to sit in the rocking chair.
Very good. So let's go down. So you mentioned it. So let's go down that path. Why are people asking you? Why are people hiring you to consult on development in Brantford?
Well, it's not it's not so much consulting, I guess, as in helping them facilitate doing developments in Brantford. Um, it's um, it's more sorry. It's more helping them facilitate their developments because I was the economic development officer in Brantford for many years,
How
a
many
couple of
years?
decades.
Do you
Um,
do you know the number? Can you
yes, I
count that
do.
high?
Yeah, yeah, 28. I
Holy
know
cow!
that's a big number, but I have to say the reason that I did that was because I had one of the best jobs that you could ever imagine. Every day was different. It's kind of like being a realtor in a way. Every day was different, and I got to meet so many amazing people and help them along the way. So that was really what kept me going in that job for all those years.
It's interesting. You mentioned like meeting people because that's actually how we met. A long time ago. It was actually Don Campbell, who, best-selling author in real estate in the real estate category for Canadians of all time. He instructs investors to like the first person you should meet at a city is someone in the economic development office. So I think I emailed you. I made a phone call and I booked an appointment to come meet you. Do you remember what year that was? Was it like
Well,
2010, 11?
I know, no, I know. I always say it's like 5 years ago, but 5 years is like goes by so fast. So it was probably closer to 8 or 9 years ago now.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, close to 2010 or 2011 ish.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And yes, so I met with many people over the course of my career, like you,
Hmm.
and not like you. To, so yeah, it was a really interesting and diverse and a great career, really.
Okay. So my intention to meet with you was to learn, kind of get like an inside scoop on how to invest in Brantford as a small residential investor. Did many people do that? Did many small investors, people who buy single family homes, uh, come and meet with you or some of your staff to learn
Some
more?
did,
So,
some did, but not so many. Jay Garimi actually came and met with me,
hmm.
um, and but no, not so many.
And
We
then,
would
sorry, go ahead.
more often than not, and not so much on the residential side, but the commercial side, we would get people coming into our office that would have already leased a place and then find out that they couldn't do what they wanted to do in it and then try and figure out all that mess, right? So, yeah,
So
but no, you and your group were probably a little ahead of the curve on doing that, meeting with us and finding out where the good neighborhoods were and what what to look out for and that sort of thing.
It's interesting. So actually, you mentioned like the commercial folks, people who lease something. What was the mistake that they made? Where along the way did they go wrong? They
Well,
didn't talk to you
often,
first, obviously,
well, no, not so much us. I mean,
or planning.
just not doing due diligence.
Uh-huh.
Just believing that because there's a store there that you could maybe put a restaurant there, or you know, just a whole myriad of things that could go wrong, because you thought that you know, just because it was listed as commercial, you could do that there.
Right, right,
Those were really, really common mistakes
right.
of people. And what we used to find, we had and they still do operate a small business office in the city of Brantford, which is a great resource for people starting out. But what we find that after a long weekend, people have been together with their friends and family, and they've been all talking and hyped up, and then you get this big crush of people coming in, and yeah, sometimes they would have already um, gone out and made a commitment to space before they'd even got a business plan or any of that sort of stuff, right? And yeah, it's scary stuff, um,
That's
but that's what
unfortunate.
but that's what entrepreneurs do, right? Because they're visionary and they have all this stuff going on in their heads, and so you kind of know a little bit about that.
I understand it because I run into things full bore, but I consider myself quite risk adverse. And also, thanks to largely real estate, the way things have gone with my portfolio and everyone else's portfolio, really, I have something to fall back on should things go to heck. And also understand, you probably know better than I do. That number that always flies around is 1 in 10 businesses fail, right? So if you know that going in, you may want to, take baby steps.
For sure, for sure. But that's not, when people are speaking to their passion and to their heart, then they don't really consider that. They kind of throw that out the window.
Ah, lovely.
Uh, to a large extent, and then but you have to also listen to um, the people that have been very successful and entrepreneurial, and you hear that many of them have failed before they became successful.
Right,
So that's just something that I guess people have in their DNA if you are an entrepreneur like you, right?
right, right. Now, how many realtors came to meet with you?
Well, I guess how the breakdown would have been, probably about 70% would be realtors,
Hmm.
mostly in the industrial commercial sphere,
Okay.
because that was kind of where I kind of lived,
Mm-hmm.
because my main focus was, when I was hired for the city, was to sell their industrial lands,
Mm-hmm.
which at the time they had quite a bit of. Now they have none, but they've done some boundary adjustments, and maybe they'll get back into the industrial land game. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
going forward, but so yeah, so we spent a lot of time working with realtors, in doing networking with them. We did different things. We supported the industrial and Society of Industrial and Office Realtors. We did some locally. We brought them in with some other developers and investors to do golf tournaments at the Brantford Golf and Country Club,
Right,
and different things like that to
right,
try and build those associations.
right. You sounds like, so you said something like 70% of your business was commercial. So it sounds as if you were 70% of your job was as if you were a commercial salesperson for the city.
Well, in a way, in a backhanded way, yes. Yes, that's right. Because we would have to work with them.
Right,
And we worked with the province of Ontario really closely too.
right.
They would bring us clients a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, more more kind of in the early years, more in the 90s, when there was a lot of Japanese investment. We got a lot of that type of thing. And then later in my career, no, but later in my career, we were able to land Ferrero Rocher, the chocolate company, and some other German investments that were suppliers to them.
Mm-hmm.
So, so that all worked through the province, particularly the foreign direct investment. And I know Hamilton has also been really involved with that over the years as well. So yeah, so it's probably 70% realtors, and then maybe 10% government, and then the other 20% would have been local,
Mm-hmm.
like people that were looking to expand.
And then, oh, can you share that story that you shared about at the casino about?
Which one? I shared so many. That's almost
Uh,
embarrassing.
it was it was the delegation that wouldn't leave Niagara Falls.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, we had issues sometimes with, and that wasn't early on. It was later on in my career where when they were touring around the province, and if they happened to land in Niagara or Windsor or someplace where there was a casino, then it was hard to get them sometimes out of those
Right.
communities to come to our community. And
Right.
usually those kind of tours were um, fairly well coordinated and
Right.
timed,
Right.
so that if there was a hiccup by like a half a day, that was a big deal.
Yeah. Was there anything there else they were doing besides the casino? Are you allowed to share or no?
No, I wouldn't. No, I don't want to share that. That's not appropriate. But people would know. They know St. Catharines. What can I say?
Yeah, for folks in Niagara Falls, what do you think people will be doing with their time other than the casino?
Or in Windsor, they could do the same thing in Windsor.
Yeah.
But there's very few communities in between that you can still do that in. If that's
um. So what's working today? Actually, things change a lot, and that's what because things changed a lot even between when we met and talked about investing in residential real estate in Brantford.
yes,
Because um, back then the student market was still a good place to be.
yes.
What is the answer today? And my point I'm trying to make is like things change. People need to understand that. Uh, Real estate markets move. People know that. Like rents change, prices change, but also ideal strategies for cities change as well.
Yeah, yes. When we met, I believe that Laurier was ramping up, and there was a lot of uptake in for the small investors in the student marketplace. Today, I believe that Laurier themselves have a lot of purpose-built student rentals, which are in competition with our investors, and you have to take that into consideration, and not least of which, back then when we met, Laurier was talking about by today having 13 or more thousand students. And I don't know the exact numbers, but between Laurier and now Conestoga, they might have, I'm going to say, and don't hold me to this, but maybe 4,000 students.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a huge difference between 13 and 4. So I think that is something that, if you're looking at the student rental market,
Mm-hmm.
you really have to be cognizant of that.
Right.
If you're 4 or 5 blocks out from where the campus is, which is in the downtown,
Mm-hmm.
which is unique to some communities, but I mean, Laurier itself has 22 or more buildings in play in the downtown core. It's not that they don't have a significant impact, but if you're looking at a student rental, you have to be cognizant of the fact that you're in competition with them.
Right.
And they've got a lot more beds and all of those sort of things. So the further out that you go from the core,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, the less money you're going to get for
Right.
sure.
Right.
And, maybe you're going to have some vacancies.
Right. You allude to a good point because, for example, 4 or 5 blocks in different markets, that's nothing. That's you're still in prime zone. I remember when I went to school in London, that wasn't considered far at all.
No.
And for our clients who invest in like McMaster area, that is not far at all. Versus the Brantford market, that is like you might as well not even try it 4 blocks. And so yeah, so I want the listeners to take that away. Is every market's different. Doesn't matter if you know your market well. You have to understand your target market. If your target market's somewhere else, things behave differently. It's a really good idea to understand how that market behaves and then invest accordingly. So what would you invest? What strategy makes more sense in Brantford?
Well, I mean, my investment in Brantford came sort of backwards, in that I owned a Brantford cottage while I lived and worked there.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's this cottage
this
style. It's not actually a cottage, right?
No, it's not a lake. That's right. It's not a lake, but it is called the Brantford Cottage, and it's historic and it's very old.
Got it.
But it suited my purposes, and I had an opportunity to actually move back this way. I'm in Burlington now, but I moved to Ancaster, and now I'm moving back this way only for personal reasons. But I still have my original house in Brantford, which I loved. Um, and I was able to rent that out to a single individual. And but today, what makes sense to me in Brantford, I was been really excited after our weekend last weekend, with Charles and Andy and Steve, to really start looking at properties that had some not only rental potential, but development potential. And I think for me personally, going forward, looking at secondary suites, the Brantford market over the last couple of years, they've only done less than a dozen secondary suites a year.
Hmm.
Um, Yet they have a lot of the same fundamentals as the neighborhoods that we've been looking in Hamilton and St. Catharines. So I think there's some opportunities there,
Mm-hmm.
to go forward. But I also think there's some development potentials for doing what we looked at last weekend as well.
Right. Is there any simpler style investment strategies? Because, for example, like you first mentioned, one of the most difficult investment strategies any of our clients ever try to tackle, which is to actually build something.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. And I've been saying this more and more is the investment you do is better than the investment you don't. And for example, secondary suites, for example, is a significant renovation. Uh, I can't recall a time where in any time that our renovations were this significant. For example, even when we did student rentals, we never added kitchens. Right, kitchens are a significant renovation. A lot more
Right.
electrical venting. It's a fire hazard as well. Right, that's why we avoided them in student rentals. We didn't add them unless we absolutely had to, which was basically never. uh, but the point I'm trying to get at is, um, I forget my point. Oh, sorry. My point was, what is a more like a starter investment for that you would recommend in Brantford, or is there one?
Well, certainly I think that, long-term rent and hold is still a good investment in Brantford. Um, Property values now, have increased significantly in the last few years, and you're going to laugh when I tell you what the average single family home price is. But there's still a lot of people own their own homes in Brantford, but there's still a good rental market there.
Mm-hmm.
So the average single home price is about $450,000,
Mm,
according to the real estate board last month.
right.
So for your typical, the same thing that Hamilton Burlington market would look at, your 3 bedroom, single family home. And for the longest time, when I was working in economic development, it was stuck at 250, and it wouldn't. It would not move.
Oh,
And so we would be filling out these RFPs for these different government um, projects that we were hoping to land, and that would be the price that we would stick in there. But so it has moved significantly, and obviously there's a lot of homes that are more than that. And but yeah, that's what they report. The average single family home price last month was just over 450,000.
wow. Okay.
So there's lots of opportunity, I guess, for buy and hold,
Right.
and maybe even rent to own. If that's a market that people are feeling maybe a little more confident in because the prices aren't escalating as much as they have been over the last couple of years. Maybe that's a market that people want to get into too.
Right. Right. Is the average of 450, is that detached or is that total average across condominiums as well?
I think that's the average single family home price.
Oh, okay.
I
So
could be I could be corrected, but there's not a lot of condominiums, so I'm pretty sure that was the price that I saw.
right. So the Hamilton average is almost 500 across all categories, and a detached in Hamilton is 550. So a pretty significant discount from the neighboring um,
Yeah,
the
but
neighboring
your
municipality.
your population is five times. You're looking at five times Brantford. If Brantford's around 100, Hamilton's over 500. So you're looking at a lot bigger marketplace too.
Do you know what the growth rate is for the city in terms of
The,
population?
no, I don't. But it's not significant. It's it would be a couple percent a year.
Are they
But
restricting
I
land in Brantford?
Well, no, but we did have a restriction on land, as I indicated earlier. We talked about, well, we didn't go into detail, but Brantford and the county of Brant. So let me back up. Brantford is a single tier municipality, unlike Hamilton, which is a region that includes Ancaster, Flamborough, Stony Creek, and I'm sure I'm missing a few other places, but Brantford is just Brantford. So when you deal with the city of Brantford, you have one development charge, you pay one set of taxes to the city of Brantford. But surrounding Brantford is the county of Brant, and it is also a city which was formulated back in the late 1990s because of Mike Harris and his um, wishes to um, conglomerate, I guess. And that's what happened to Hamilton was they were forced to amalgamate all
Mm-hmm.
those places. So the county got afraid of that. So, but the county itself forms a ring around Brantford, which is the center of a donut, I guess. So Brantford was running out of development lands back, 15 years ago or more, and started down this process with the county of Brant, the city of the county of Brant, to try and gather more both lands for residential and for employment. And they just came to an agreement, I believe, in 2017 or 2018. So they've come to an agreement to, I think it's about 5,000 acres, and I'm not sure what the split is between employment and residential, but so they're doing the planning process now to bring those lands on stream for development.
Mm-hmm.
But so yeah, that's what they're been up to.
Is the province investing in Brantford, as in like LRT or GO Train or?
Well, they have not LRT. They do have Go Bus service to Brantford.
Mm-hmm.
Brantford's has the CN main line through it, and they have 5 via trains in and out of Toronto every day. And
Oh, okay.
they do have passengers on that. About, I think the last time I heard, which was quite a few years ago now, was about 400 daily passengers, which isn't enough really to support. Um, but about 2 years ago, I believe they got Go Bus to Brantford, which So the bus will take you from the Brantford bus terminal down to Hamilton, where you can catch the GO train, or maybe you can take a bus straight into Toronto. I'm not sure, but I believe they take you into Hamilton. So obviously, if the population warrants it, and if there's enough demand for it over time, then they will get it.
Right.
I'm not really sure how St. Catharines or Niagara got it before Brantford, but they're a little bit bigger population, so maybe that's part of it. I'm not sure. But yeah, that's definitely on their radar, and they're very cognizant of that they need that link to they have the rail link, but it's not totally convenient. It's convenient for workers. It's not convenient if you just want to go into Toronto to see a show or something like that.
Right.
Because you've got to be home by 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. So.
Right. Interesting. Now, you mentioned Ferrero Rocher. Are they still in town, and any other employers that are worth mentioning?
Well, Ferrero, yes, they're very much still in Brantford. They're relatively new to the community, and they've been expanding, both with product lines and with other, just physically expanding. And they did bring quite a few suppliers with them, which is really the bonus spin-off of economic development if you can do that. But other significant employers, one that's been there forever is FC Johnson Wax. They've been there for over 150 years. And the story was that the mayor of Brantford met the owner, Mr. Johnson, on a train, and I can't remember where the train was from. I think somewhere in the States. And they had a conversation, and he was maybe looking to open an office or a plant in Canada, and he convinced him that Brantford was the place to open. So that's a really significant story that has stayed around for quite a long time, and is a great story, and they've been there, as I say, for over 150 years.
Right.
And I don't think they make wax there anymore. When I first went to Brantford, they did have this little line where, like I'm talking about, shorter than your living room, where they had boxes of or cans of wax, the Carnauba wax for your floors, which we don't. Nobody even knows that anymore.
And then how many people do they employ? And also, how many people does Ferrero Rocher employ, and then maybe spin-off employees?
Well, Ferrero employs a lot of temporary workers because of their chocolates are really, popular from February to March or April, and then so they have a lot of temporary employees, but I think they have about 800 full-time employees.
That's a lot.
It is. But I think Brantford is the smallest. No, Brantford's the biggest community that Ferrero's ever invested in the world, because they like to be in small communities where they kind of keep their families together from, kind of cradle to grave.
Interesting.
But their spin-offs are like packaging. There was a company that did the papers for the Rochers, the little brown paper that it sits in.
Yeah, the wrapper.
Yeah. So there's a company called EcoPack that is in Brantford that does that, and they're a small company here, but big in Italy. And there's a German company called Visa that there's a new product out called Ferrero to Go, which is like they've like breadsticks and like the dip with the Nutella and stuff. And anyway, and then there's a couple of other plastic packaging companies. So there's like probably about 4 or 5 that have come, which wouldn't have the same kind of employment numbers, but still significant investment in the community. And then, there's lots of other employers in Brantford that Brantford was the home of Massey Ferguson, the tractor and combine company, and that was really what they hung their hat on. They had 2 companies. They had White Farm Equipment and Massey Ferguson.
Right.
And they so back in the like 50s to the 80s, those were the, in their heyday.
Right.
And then that kind of went out of favor, and but there was a lot of metalworking, but now food production is fairly significant
Mm-hmm.
in the area. Not that Ferrero necessarily is food, but there's like other there's for some people it might be. I don't know,
Not
but
me.
for
I'm allergic to
no,
hazelnuts.
are you?
It doesn't
You
sit well with me. Do you
no.
know why they chose Brantford specifically? Like, is it for transportation? Is it because of skilled labor and those sorts of things?
Um, I don't know why exactly because you hear different stories, and I wouldn't want to say a story that wasn't true. But I think we were able to deliver a site that they wanted. They started out looking for this is how economic development goes. They started out looking for a 25-acre site, and they ended up with 150 acres. Um, because for most people, most developments, um, they think they need something and then they end up with something else. And that's so typical of my experience with all my businesses in the sense that, you think you need 20,000 square feet when you really only need 10, but you end up with 30 for some reason. And and that's what happened with them.
You upsold
So,
them.
well, we didn't have it. That's what's so funny because they ended up buying land that wasn't part of the city. Well, it was part of the city. I shouldn't say that, but the city actually didn't own it. We were able to
Sorry,
facilitate.
sorry, Paisley. Is there somebody knocking?
No, so we were able to facilitate a deal that was on a private sector parcel that was right beside our industrial park where we were able to service it easily and all that sort of stuff. Because we did have the 25 acres, but we didn't have the 150. But anyway, long story short, it was able to, it all came to fruition and it was great. And they're a great, you know, asset to the
Right,
community, and they're really good community partners.
right. For people who don't know, because actually, I think we both kind of underappreciate this. But what is the importance of adding 800 employees to a city? What, right? Think of um, put yourself in the real estate investor's shoes. Like, did because what I'm thinking is when I see an employer like that, for example, like I don't recall the last time we had something that big in Hamilton, and also listeners should be thinking about the city where you invest in. Where have you seen that sort of employee number net new come to your town? Because I
Well,
know I've seen it, like when Canada Bread Maple Leaf, and they opened up in Hamilton.
yeah, that was one that Brantford lost. Because and I have to say that, so if you want to talk about that sort of geography, so back then, Brantford won the Tim Hortons Bakery, which is now called Arista, and I don't know how many employees they have currently, but they were around 300. But
That's a lot.
um, and they also won Procter and Gamble, the warehouse, which is a 700,000 square feet thing away from Hamilton. So Neil and Norm were not very happy with us at a certain point in time. But I have to say
Sorry,
that was,
sorry. Neil and Norm are pretty high up in Hamilton, at the city of Hamilton.
yeah, in
For the
economic
listeners' benefit.
development. But the reality was at the time we were able to service that request in terms of land and probably employees too,
Right.
to a certain extent. Although, I mean, certainly they brought with them some key people.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, and now Hamilton has kind of trumped Brantford back that way with the airport lands,
Yeah.
and that is the way it is. I was fortunate to be in Brantford at that time because we did have shovel-ready land,
Right.
and we were able to, as I said, service those requests
Right.
for and you know, it doesn't really come down to dollars so much. And I think we talk about this in our, even on the residential end of things,
Mm-hmm.
because the land price is the land price. And it can be big and it can be smaller and whatever. But if you're looking at investing over a long period of time, that kind of like sort of like evens out. And it's what the investment um, you know, means in terms of for these businesses. If they're buying it themselves,
Mm-hmm.
then it means what they can make on that
Right.
back end.
Right.
If they're investing, if they're not buying it and they're just renting, well, it still means what they can make on the back end of it. It just means that they know what their costs are like going in
Right.
and going over time,
Right.
right? So, um,
What would you say their investment horizon is?
what I'm not sure what you mean.
How long do they plan on being in one place?
Well, I think when you're talking about businesses that have
Mm-hmm.
like the equipment,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not talking about moving every 10 years. Or, I know in the United States it used to be um, there'd be like a 25-year sort of horizon for some companies,
Mm-hmm.
and then they'd start looking because in different than Canada and the States, they would give all sorts of tax incentives for a company to move to their
Mm-hmm.
location. Where in Canada,
Mm-hmm.
we don't really do that. And you know what? From an economy perspective, it makes more sense. There is money available.
Mm-hmm.
Frero got money from the province.
Mm-hmm.
Canada Bread got money from the province. But it's different than what we're it's different than what we are experiencing here in Canada. It's just we the tax base fuels the municipalities, and that's the important part.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because Amazon's getting a lot of attention for the amount of rebates they're getting. For example, in New York, I believe was $2 or $3 billion, and then it's been going around social media how Amazon's not paying any tax. Well, I understand that these were negotiated up front for states and cities to uh, get their tens of thousands of employees to add that to their tax base. Uh, but what I want to get what I want to bring a lot of this commercial stuff back to is how does when an employer like 800 people, when it comes to town, what effect does that have on residential real estate?
Oh, it definitely has an effect on residential real estate because people maybe that were underemployed or unemployed before now are looking at, maybe moving up in the real estate ladder, or, they're bringing in people from out of town that are looking at either renting or buying places, whether,
Mm-hmm.
if they're going to be there for a short or a longer period of time. So, yeah, it definitely has an impact.
Right.
There's no question.
Have you seen that in your own property then? Have you noticed values go up in your property, and how are rents tracking?
Well, my property,
Or the
um,
market overall?
yes, the market overall for sure. Um, my property is a little bit, well, it's not unique in any stretch of the imagination, but yes, it's definitely gone up in value. My rents haven't gone up so much in value because I have the same person living in there,
Right.
and I only have a single person in there, so it can only go up as much as the inflation, right? The
Right.
CPP. So
What about market rent? What about market rents?
market rents have, oh, definitely. Just from what I've been hearing from the Rockstar group, what they're reporting for market rents and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
what I see on Realtor.ca and on
Mm-hmm.
Kijiji, absolutely,
Right.
they have totally. Well, they're very comparable to Hamilton.
Right. 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 Okay, so that's
Very comparable.
interesting because you're saying how average price now is about 450
Yes,
for a single family.
yes,
So that's significantly less than Hamilton, but you're seeing rents comparable.
yep. I mean, maybe 100 or maybe 100 or 200 less, but from what I've heard that the Rockstar people are reporting for what they're getting for rents, and from what I see, from what they're asking,
Hmm.
yeah, they're very comparable.
Do you recall some of those rent numbers are for the listeners' benefit?
Well, I mean, I'm not seeing so many two splits, but single families, I'm seeing anywhere from 16 to some of the newer places are like 2,300. They're asking for rent for a single family. So if you were doing say you were buying a 450 house and you were doing a basement suite, yeah, you could probably easily 3,500 in income.
Fantastic. And one of the benefits, and this doesn't get talked about enough when people evaluate cities for investment, but because I don't know, because we do invest, we're just not economists. We're actually people who practice. Um, Something that makes Brantford stand out is how friendly the city actually is towards investment. We won't name names for cities that aren't so friendly in terms of like it's just difficult to get things done. Um, for example, as an investor, and especially one with ethics and integrity, all we're trying to do is follow building code, right? But we run into inspectors and we run into city staff who don't who who are working with a different set of rules than Ontario Building Code, versus what I'm hearing in Brantford is their staff teams are much smaller and they seem to be better trained. So it's not like it's less red tape. It's just the appropriate amount of red tape, which makes it a much. And then relative to other municipalities, it's one of the best to deal with.
Well, my experience was that over time, we didn't, and when I first started, we didn't have site plan control for the industrial stuff. And when we did have it, we would sit in on those meetings. And what the benefit to the client was that everyone that had sort of a finger on that approval was at that table or a representative of that person. And everyone would get that same sort of feedback. And so the client would hear that with their appropriate consultants. And I just felt that that was such a much better um, way of processing things. And it was so much fair to everyone. So you got to hear that information firsthand. And I feel that I mean, I haven't been in Brantford and I haven't been in that realm for a couple of years now, but I feel that that's still the same way with our investors that the building inspectors and everyone, just as you're saying, is they're trying to give them a fair shot based on the information that they have. If they don't have the right information, then you know what? Um, I guess then you're left to your own devices. But if you're upfront with them with what you've got, then I think that it is my experience, and I'm not just saying that. I believe it is that Brantford is a business friendly community.
And that's what we're seeing on the ground. That's what our people on the ground are telling us. So I think we might get some traffic in Brantford right after this podcast goes out. Oh,
I
so
hope,
do we have a plan for? We don't have a
I
date
hope
yet for a
so.
bus tour of Brantford, do we?
No, you haven't scheduled one, and if you would like the mayor to come, I can try and make that arrangement, but I need to know as soon as possible.
Okay, we'll talk offline.
Yeah, yeah,
For the listeners'
but
benefit, if you want to be on a tour with someone on the level of Paisley who knows the city that well, who can get the mayor to the event, I think this is
oh,
a
I'm
good
not
opportunity.
promising I can get him to do that. I'm
Well,
just
bring
saying
the bus
that
to his house.
I can make the ask. I can make the ask. No, Kevin, the new mayor of Brantford. I mean, Chris Frio. the mayor that beforehand was a great pro-business mayor as well.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Davis, who's the new mayor, was a lawyer in town, and was on council in the past, and he was also the chair of our economic development board at one point.
Oh,
So he's very pro-business,
right.
And you know, uh, he's been very transparent and very open, and so either mayor would be great. Is all I'm saying.
Excellent. Now, Paisley,
Yeah.
if people want to follow up with you, so I usually advise against people giving their email. Is there other means people can get in touch with you? Snapchat, Twitch.
Well,
What are the kids
no,
using these days?
I don't know. What are you using? You're a kid.
I've only been on Instagram for like 6 months.
Well, I'm on Instagram.
Are you? Oh yeah,
I am.
we follow each other. You're one
I'm
of the few people I follow.
Paism6. Where I got that from, I have no idea.
One more
But
time.
I'm Paism6.
Yeah.
On Instagram.
Yeah.
And then I'm on Facebook just as me. Whatever.
How do you spell your last name? How do people decide how to spell Mackenzie? Because I've seen it so many ways. MCMAC.
Well, mine is different. It is MAC, but it's a small K. It's all lowercase. It's MACKENZIE.
Excellent. And folks, I'll have all this in the show notes as well. So if you want to friend and be social with Paisley, and if you want to connect with her in person, we will be offering a bus tour to look at some of these investment opportunities. Hopefully some that are already existing or in the middle of being ready. So like renovation projects, for example, that are safe to tour. And it sounds like we're going to have a stop at the mayor's house, or at least a former mayor.
I don't know where the mayor's house is, so I shouldn't say that, but I can find out.
I wouldn't mind a former mayor either, because the kind of like the they're not restrained by having to talk like a politician anymore. So I don't mind that at all. We'll have a date for everyone, and then we'll obviously look at property that are opportunities as well. So awesome. So folks, keep go ahead, friend Paisley. I'm sure she'll share when these tours are happening. And anything else you want to share, Paisley? Any final thoughts on Brantford? And it's not like you're only like Brantford for investment. Like, for example, you're investing in Burlington now as well.
Well, that's right. Yes, I'm in Burlington now, and hopefully I'm going to be working in other markets like St. Catharines and Hamilton and whatever. But yeah, it'd be nice to get some more people out to Brantford for sure.
Super cool. And you think you'll have some developable lands as well? It's actually really interesting, because one of the things that came out of the development tour we did in St. Catharines last week was a lot of people have no idea how to look for opportunity.
Oh, that's so like
for you.
For what they're doing, that's so easy. You just drive around and you find houses that are on corners and have big lots, and I mean, yeah, it's and they're everywhere. If you start opening your eyes to that, there's a lot of them in the communities that we're talking about for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Are they all developable? No, absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of them could be for sure.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
All right. Very
Me
good.
too.
All right. Thank you, Paisley. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you, Erwin.
All right. Talk to you soon.